What is going on, guys? So, today I wanted to talk about what is currently kind of going on in Overwatch, or more so, accurately, what I have observed happening within Overwatch. So, let's get into it. One of the things that I've kind of observed in terms of recently is quite a large shift away from the traditional doomerist culture that used to kind of surround Overwatch, where I feel like a lot of the Overwatch content that I'm seeing is not only much more positive, but also more accurately, I do feel like there's more of a shift to a more positive viewpoint of just Overwatch in general. And I have to say that I do like it, but I also mostly want to discuss why it's happening. The biggest reason I think is that I think Rivals came out. A lot of the people who were complaining relentlessly about Overwatch were saying that they just want another game to play have left, right? Those people who didn't genuinely like Overwatch and genuinely were complaining have left the game. And I have to say that overall, I like it, right? A lot of the toxicity, like the overly toxic people, the very mean part of the community, I don't know if it's a mean, but you know what I mean. All of those people have left the game. They have gone to other games, specifically, they've gone to Rivals. And the reason I like this so much is that for those people, that other game now exists for them, right? It's no longer that they just have to play Overwatch and constantly be angry or annoyed or whatever the fact is, and they could just go and leave and play their other game. And if they like Rivals better, that's great. But if they don't, they come back and they kind of come back with a different viewpoint on Overwatch now. And I have to say that, for the most part, I think that is a major reason that we're kind of seeing this shift. I don't think it's the only reason, but I do think it is a major reason, right? So I do think that that is one of the reasons, but I don't think it's the only reason. Secondly, right, the second reason, I think there's just nothing left to complain about, right? I think, unironically, the Overwatch constant complainer culture has left it to the point where there's nothing left to critique. The game is better balanced than it was when it first came out. I'm not going to say it's like perfectly balanced, but the fact is, like, they brought back 6v6, right? We know PvE is not happening because we've already discussed that, right? We know all of this stuff. They brought back loot boxes. They changed battle passes when we wanted them to. They've done all of this stuff, and it's at the point where there's nothing left, right? A lot of the common criticisms of, like, bring back 6v6 or bring back loot boxes or you guys are really greedy don't apply anymore because they've just fixed it all, right? So to an extent, I do think that the complaining has worked within that regard, but then again, is it that simple? No. I don't know what Overwatch is thinking behind the scenes, so I'm not going to act like, well, they were going to fix that stuff and complaining just made it, worse or whatever. I'm not going to make that argument, but, I do think it matters at least a little bit. But I do think it's almost some ironic in the sense where a lot of the biggest criticisms, the constant arguing, has just left us in the state where there's nothing left to argue about because it's all in the game. You can't argue about not having loot boxes anymore because we have loot boxes. You can't argue about not having 6v6 because we have it. I'm kind of just restating stuff. So, but let's move on. I think another thing in terms of, like, reasons that we've seen this shift is Stadium. One of the criticisms that people had for a very long time was that Overwatch just didn't have any new content. And I think that the whole, Stadium being out and releasing Stadium, I think, is showing the people that that's not really the case. It's not quite the case anymore. Overwatch is willing to bring us more content. They are willing to do all of this stuff. We just need to wait for them to do it, right? Stadium took a very long time. I think they've been working on it for 4 years at least, is what I've heard. And, there's definitely a valid argument for maybe we should have had it sooner, or maybe we shouldn't have, or whatever. But at the end of the day, we are getting, something out of them. So, the criticism initially of, like, oh, well, there's no real content in the game, although I didn't really like that argument in the first place, It's finally, you can't really use that anymore because, well, there is content. One of the things I've said in the past, obviously not on this channel, but one of the things I've said in the past was the thing that I really disliked coming from Overwatch 2 to Overwatch 1 was the community. There's kind of been this much more doomer-esque style of looking at Overwatch, much more doomer-esque style community than we ever really had within Overwatch 1. I'm not saying that people didn't complain in Overwatch 1. That's not what I'm talking about. What I am saying is that I think the level of complaining is vastly different. And I think one of the other things is the outlook is vastly different, right? It felt like with Overwatch 2, a large portion of people were almost just complaining to complain to a certain point. And what I've said is that I don't really mind people complaining, right? I don't really care. I don't really give a shit. You know, back when Overwatch 1 first came out, everyone was complaining about the rank system, right? Fine, whatever, right? But I don't need it to be laced with every single Overwatch video, right? I don't need every single person to talk about it. I don't need to have 10 different videos every single day about why the rank system sucked. And that just felt like what I was seeing, where there used to be like, used to watch Fresh Nuts, Noob Hunter, Stylosa, and now it's just like that didn't happen anymore. You know, these people would only release these hit pieces, it felt like, on Overwatch that really didn't make me want to watch their videos because, for one, I play Overwatch. I know what I don't like, right? I don't need a video to tell me what I do and don't like. But more importantly, it was just kind of frustrating and annoying. You can actually see, Fresh Nuts doesn't post videos anymore for, I'm not gonna really get into that right now because I don't know the full reasoning, but something definitely happened outside of YouTube, if I got that correct. But I know Stylosa has kind of shifted a lot more to this doomer-esque style of Overwatch, like criticism and stuff, and he has lost a lot of people who used to watch his videos. I used to watch his videos. I used to be a pretty good Stylosa fan who would watch a lot of his videos, and I don't anymore, because anytime he makes a video on Overwatch, it is a negative video. I remember one guy I was arguing with on TikTok was like, oh, biggest Overwatch creator, Stylosa. I'm like, are you sure about that? Right? He does create some content on Overwatch, but not really. He doesn't really play the game anymore. He kind of just sits there and like talks about it with an article in the background, talks about why it's so bad. I really don't consider him as a content creator, an Overwatch content creator. He used to be, right? I don't define him that as anymore. But I do think Stylosa has lost a large portion of his audience from maintaining this rhetoric and talking like this. Obviously, what I mean by that is he still does have millions of subscribers because people haven't unsubscribed from him yet, but he's not getting the views he used to get. He used to get videos with millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views. Now he gets videos with 50, 60,000 views, right? No longer is he getting millions of views on his videos anymore. It's not going to happen. And one of the things is, like, when Rivals came out, I saw him kind of shift to Rivals instead and say how much he likes it. And I said, it's good. I don't want to see, him constantly complaining anymore. And I'm actually kind of happy that he has moved on and found another game. But to be fair, none of it ever really caught on like his Overwatch content caught on. Overwatch is what he was known for. He got a lot of views, he got a lot of subscribers, and he shifted to like Helldivers for a little bit. He shifted to, Rivals. He still does Rivals content. He shifted to a lot of different games for a little while, but he always would do these hit pieces on Overwatch like every couple of months, which is always just kind of weird to me. Because obviously those were only, the funny thing is, like, those were the only really videos that brought in any attention was when he would do those hit pieces on Overwatch. And it's just funny in a way because, he just doesn't he doesn't play the game anymore. He doesn't really do that stuff. He just sort of talks about it. He doesn't even open Overwatch. He just opens an article about Overwatch in the back and reads it and talks about how it's so bad. But I do kind of find it funny. I find it funny how large of an audience he lost because he just can't stop like the humorous nature of talking about Overwatch like that, because people don't like that, right? I know I don't like that. It puts a really big damper on the community when the community is just not fun and enjoyable. One of the things I've kind of said in the past is for content creators to just make content. And I do understand that this is like, I am kind of sitting here talking, so maybe I am part of the problem. But it was kind of a funny thing because you just see so many people like sit there and like feel the need to discuss in detail what's going on with Overwatch or why they dislike Overwatch. And I'm like, man, shut up and just play the damn game. Enjoy Overwatch and stuff like that. I do understand the hypocrisy there. You could tell me in the comments. I don't give a shit. The community has always been it was one of those parts where I used to interact with the Overwatch community so much. I used to watch so much Overwatch. I used to play so much Overwatch. Now I just play a lot of Overwatch. I don't really watch a lot of Overwatch anymore because the rhetoric that used to surround it was just so annoying. Every other video was somebody complaining about the rank system or this or that. It was just not very fun, and it was very annoying to constantly kind of interact with that style of community, that style of system. And it was just really not something that you wanted to be a part of. So typically you weren't. Kind of ironically, in the sense, one thing that happened was I used to think that way, right? I used to be very, Overwatch sucks and I hate Overwatch and stuff like this. I used to say a lot of the stuff that people are saying today, right? So I'm not like well, I wouldn't say today, but you know what I mean. So I used to be one of those people who were very doomer-esque even when Overwatch 2 first came out. And then I kind of just stopped. I kind of took a step back and I said, wait a second, what am I doing here, right? Why am I constantly complaining about this game that I play all the time? I'm not playing it all the time because I hate to play it, right? I'm playing it all the time because I love to play it and I like the game. And I started just being a lot more positive towards Overwatch and actually enjoying the changes that they made. Because this is kind of when the cracks started to form and I started to realize that a lot of the arguments were baseless. People said, oh man, the rank system sucks. And then they changed the rank system and people were like, it still sucks. And I'm like, well, hold on, right? The argument originally was the rank system sucks. I'm not going to play the game, whatever, right? And then the criticism is still the same even when they decide to change the rank system. So I'm like, hold on. And then they're updating this and updating that, and people are still complaining about the stuff that's not in the game anymore. People are complaining about all this stuff that's not in the game anymore. I'm like, well, hold on now, right? I thought the whole point was like we're complaining about this to get it out of the game, but it's not in the game anymore. How are we to complain about it? Some of the biggest things that like really shifted were when Overwatch changed stuff quickly, right? People were like, oh man, this is broken and not fun and not fun to play against. And then they fixed it like in a week or two, and I'm like, yeah, and people are like, it should have never been broken in the first place. I'm like, all right, yeah, I mean, I guess, but they fixed it almost immediately, so I don't really get what the criticism is in that department, right? I mean, it's fixed. Now you can't just be like, well, you fixed it too slowly. It's like, I guess outside of fixing it in like a day or two, a week or two is not like a horrible response in my opinion. It's a perfectly fine response. It's a perfectly reasonable response time. I just like that they fix it at all. There are a lot of issues in a lot of other games that go unresolved for years, and it's ridiculous in some instances. But I kind of started to really have a shift in Overwatch, and I really just started to enjoy the game, and I found that I was a lot less depressed overall kind of about Overwatch. A big thing was just to kind of stop interacting with the Overwatch community, stop watching Overwatch videos, stop listening to them, and just play the game and enjoy it. And now I'm a pretty staunch defender of Overwatch because I've been in that scenario where a lot of people are right now complaining about Overwatch, or were complaining about Overwatch all the time, talking about how it's so bad, talking about how it can do no wrong. It's just not very happy to be like that, right? I mean, one of the things that you have to ask yourself is, what are you doing at that point? Why don't you just go and play a different game? Like, why constantly complain about this game that you don't like? If you don't like it that much, you should kind of just leave. And the argument for a very long time was, well, there wasn't a decent alternative. And I understand that, right? But I also understand how that's not like the best criticism in the world or like the best thing to say, because I understand that some of these people are complaining because they want to see Overwatch get better, and I do understand that to a large extent. But now that there is somewhere else to go, like you can go and play Rivals, I do think that a lot of people are leaving, going to Rivals, or I should say a lot of those people who had those opinions, who said that stuff, did leave and go and play rivals. I know we're kind of like lapping back on myself at this point. We're kind of talking about stuff that I already talked about, but I just kind of want to reiterate. Um, it's not very fun being the constant doomerist, constantly, consuming this negative content, especially something that you play so often. You don't like play it all day, every day because you dislike it so much, right? Another big thing I think that helped me a lot was breaks from Overwatch, right? Another thing is I never really had an outlet to go and play other stuff. Kind of back when I played it on PlayStation, I really only had Overwatch, right? I never really played anything else. But now that I'm kind of on PC and I have a lot of other games, I have a lot of, outlets to where it's like when Overwatch is getting a little bit too much Overwatchy, right? Because there's some stuff that you're just not going to avoid that is inherent to Overwatch, like, the inherent rank system and the way that people act in Overwatch, all of that stuff. I think it's inherent to happen, and that if you just play Overwatch day in and day out, it's going to get to you at one point. So you just need to take a break. You can't constantly be playing Overwatch. You need to take a break. And now I have an outlet to take a break. So about, what was it, a year ago at this point? About a year ago or so, I played through all of Elden Ring. Pretty fun break, I'm not going to lie. You might see some videos on my page about it, but Star Wars Battlefront 2, kind of taking a little break playing that because it kind of came back. It was populated again, so I'm having a ton of fun with that game. I'm actually playing that while I'm recording this video for you guys. But it's very fun, I'm not just sort of stuck there constantly playing Overwatch, especially when you don't want to be playing Overwatch, which is another big thing, is that there are definitely a lot of people who will constantly queue Overwatch because they don't want to play another game or just don't have another game to play. And the problem is that queuing when you have this negative mindset is just not really what you want to be doing in a lot of scenarios. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he's like, man, losing 3 games in a row, I'm just going to get off, man. I'm not playing again. I'm just going to get tilted. It's not what we want, right? And he's entirely right. Sometimes you don't want to just ruin your night by losing 20 games in a row in Overwatch, right? Or losing 5 or 6 games in a row, right? So I genuinely am very happy with the direction that Overwatch is going. Specifically, the community. It feels like there's much more happiness in the community, and it's not so much more like despise or despair. It's almost a sense of hope, dare I say. Maybe it is just me, right? Because I have been enjoying life, dare I say, a lot recently. I've been watching the Star Wars movies. I've been playing the Star Wars games. I've been having a lot of fun. Maybe I was just depressed or whatever, but I don't think that's the case, right? It just kind of feels like inherently the Overwatch community has just gotten this sort of hit of, I don't know, like just happy drug, antidepressant, whatever the fuck, something like that, where they just seem like they're having a lot more fun in general, right? And I'm happy to watch some Overwatch videos again. I'm not just sort of avoiding it like I used to, watching other stuff. I'm actually kind of watching Overwatch again for a change, and I'm playing a lot of Overwatch again for a change, rather than playing it a very minimal amount, right? I when Overwatch 2 first came out, I played a ton of Overwatch, and then I kind of trickled down to playing a little bit of Overwatch. I was playing like 30 or 40 hours per season, where I used to be playing like 200 hours per season. But it's coming back to where I'm like playing the game again a lot more frequently, and I'm playing, for a couple hundred hours a season. Maybe not 100 hours quite yet, but I'm definitely playing the game a lot more. And I definitely feel like there's been a major shift where, like I said, a lot of people are just more positive within the Overwatch community. Yeah, right? Yeah, I kind of discussed, the whole video, yeah. So, I guess we could just end it there, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys have a great day. See ya.